Okay, we're going to begin with a kind of deep front line support. So I want you to have your bolster across the mat, horizontal, and the block is right in the center in front of the bolster, not on top. That would be kind of crazy to have the block on top of the bolster, huh? Okay, so the block is in front. You're going to sit on the block, only temporary moment, but I want you to be sure that the bolster is secure and right next to it. We're going to use the belt, and I want you to buckle it up so you got a small loop, and then you're going to scoop up your feet and slide the connected belt up to the upper thigh, right where it's not going to drop any further. There's no more space for it to drop into. Just keep it there so it's high up. If it's kind of drooping, you can tighten it up right now because you don't want it to droop and actually slip around the block. But when you center the back of the pelvis, you will feel that the connection of the block, you want to scoot down so the tailbone is on the base of the block, which is on its lowest setting. But as we arrive at lowering back, you might even go slower to lower back, right? Kind of halt, pause, feeling that increased circulation here. Maybe at your hip flexors, maybe they kind of grip up, but hopefully your core is feeling it, and your neck. I know that's part of it. Tighten up the belt and then extend your legs down. If they push into the wall, don't worry. Once you lower all the way back, things are going to loosen up in the track of the torso. Okay, so let's track the torso. We're going to lower down. If you're not there already, let your brain rest back on your blanket stack and just sort out how the legs are reaching. They could be touching a wall, they could be on the ground without the wall force, but you could also walk your feet in, bend the knees, even with the belt connected firm. You don't have to have the legs straight. It does offer you some potential for increasing that circulation right to the kidneys in the back. There's a nice supply of blood flow there. Okay, so try that before you sand. The belt again is not so severely pulled, but you might feel there's some connection. Kind of, I feel it gripping at the buttock level, so that it's pretty high up. It's almost around towards my buttocks. Then we add our sand across the upper thighs. Okay, so really try to levelize the hips. We're going to focus on trying to find some evenness in our sides in the beginning, especially. So if the sand is really right closer to the abdominal basin, you might just kind of scooch it down. And then if I scooch it down too much, I start to feel my knees. So I know that high onto the thighs, across them. And if you happen to have the wall there, you can let the feet separate a little bit more. You'll be certain the feet are straight up, right? That's important. The toes aren't turning in too much or the feet aren't flopping out. And then as you lower back the arms, right? The arms have their massive attachment to the chest. And this is where you might find that you can let go of one of the blankets. The cervical spine reveals itself. So you can slide a blanket back. You can always return it if you're feeling vulnerable in the neck. And feel where there's this broadness across the chest with the supply of breath's movement. So I like to encourage you to feel where your arms are evenly opening, right? One side might feel tighter than the other. That's the difference that can happen. So once you get the arms to what you can tell is, okay, right arm, left arm, you're both even as far as my eyes can see, then begin to associate with what feels balanced from your internal awareness. Perhaps eyes closed or an eye pillow on them. And start to sort out the feeling of the breath. Just the feeling of it moving in through the nose. And on the out breath, letting go. Maybe it's not letting go, but it's centering for you when you exhale. And just let yourself do those things that bring you to feeling that you can start the practice. And even though it looks pretty still, there's so much occurring internally to mobilize the lungs, to open up the chest, to reverse any forward hunching, right? This is kind of a different universe, right, for your, just for your anatomy, right, in this moment from the rest of the day. So just feeling how the body physiologically can start to just get optimal alignment, right? Not just the bones, but the circulatory field, right? With breathing, with the movement of the abdominals down into the center and even lower with the inhale. Take just a few more moments in this shape. Notice that when you breathe in, that it might be challenging to get the ribs to kind of have that big lift off. It might be below the rib area that you feel the lift of the abdomen, right? Movement. It's okay, because the back has so much arching right now. That might be doing all the work, right? Your spine, your back muscles are doing quite a bit. But what a relief for the trapezius, for the rhomboids. This upper back area can just kind of melt. You know, let's add in some leg circulation. So we reach down with the thighs. Now, of course, the front rim, the connection into the, even more work to do right on the quad area. But let's just kind of have an awareness that we're going to kind of let the circulation leak into the adductors, the inner leg leak, okay? So slide the sand. If you're okay with using sand continuously, you actually might be able to just move it a little bit higher, okay? And if you can unbuckle, walk the feet in, so the knees are bending a lot more, and then slide the belt. I want you to place the belt so it's overhead, easy reach, and then bring the soles of the feet together, the knees out in cobbler's pose. Supta Baddha Konasana, right? Reclining bound angle. Now, I like to have actually the sand, I just slide it down to the same zone that it was a moment ago, but you can feel where the influence is now to the leg pit circulation, right? So the feet don't have to push deeper. You can just identify with feet together. Soles, it's soulish. They may not be perfectly imprinting, but they're close together. So feel the knee motion outwards. I always find this interesting that most of us like this knee variation. It's okay, right? If you're sitting upright with the spine tall, it might not be the same for the knees. So it's that inner leg circulation that I want you to really emphasize, but it's only just to let it be. So the feet together, the sand increases the intensity. Just let it be. Just let the knees be moving out. They're probably not shifting up and down or bouncing, but you can feel their essential nature is outwards. Now I want you to reach back to the belt and just slide the hands out so that the hands are just barely pulling, but they do have a hold of the belt. And let the elbows, this might be particularly soothing because you can use your blanket above, right, over your head to ease, but also it helps keep it stretching open. It's probably easier to do it with a blanket under your arms than the arms on the ground, but we'll take ease. And just come into this for a few moments with your eyes closed and let the hands hold onto the belt. Slide them out quite a bit so that you can feel the frame of the sensation in the ribs. You're trying to expand them out on the inhale and center on the exhale. This can be challenging. So movement of the ribs. If it's slight, it's only going to get better. But you can make it the best possible. If at any time you need to come out of the pose, you just bring the knees to point up. Very simple, just knees point up, feet, bottom of the feet stepping down. Okay, so let's take another breath here. Inner leg pulley. Okay, and then when we come out, we're just going to stretch the legs straight down. So I tend to go one at a time for this, but I can feel when I push my feet to the wall, or even if the legs are just resting without the wall against the feet, feeling reach across the chest. Okay, so I want you to hold the belt, but lift it towards the ceiling. Okay, straight up towards the ceiling above the heart. Inhale, ribs expand. This might be easier with the arms above the chest. And then exhale, movement of the arms back. Feels a little bit more slender, right, when your arms go back. Inhale, ribs expand, arms towards the ceiling. And exhale back. Okay, let go of the belt, but pull it so it's right above the crown of your head. And I want you to slide the sand away and keep it nearby. It's not going to go far anyway, huh? Bend the knees and have the hands, maybe just the fingertips up at the hips, the front of the hip bones, frontal hip, and alternate lifting a knee towards the chest. I don't expect it to touch your chest, but lift one leg at a time, feeling that roundness in the spine and that movement in the hips, right? The block is great because it's a very secure object, right? It's not something you can mush. So you can feel how you balance out each hip. But as you lift up, I want you to let the foot relax. Each time the foot goes up, the knee goes up towards the chest, foot relaxing. We can always get better at this one. So don't worry if your foot's flexing and it's rigid. It's used to being stepped on. So a foot has probably some challenges being somewhat floppy, unless you get lots of floppy options during the day. But feel when the knee draws in, and now reach for your belt and keep going with the knee drawing in. Where did my belt go? It's right next to my head. Okay, so when you lift the knee up, you're going to bring your hands holding the belt wider than shoulder distance towards the knee. And we'll do about 4 more of these, not very many, but I want you to feel how you coordinate. Go slow. The strength, right, of the arms and the upper back, shoulders are pretty amazing here. But that kind of midsection, see if you can work with the midsection being soft. Right, a soft belly is a strong belly here. And as you move the knee in, see if you can move the tailbone to neutral. You don't have to tuck the tailbone under. I want you to just let the leg do its movement. Let's just do 1 more, 1 or 2 more. Okay, now place the belts down anywhere and make sure you got just 1 blanket under your head now. So if you had 2, you're going to slide 1 back. And I like to lift up my head by lengthening my neck here, just kind of nodding my head a little bit. And then get a hold of your bolster. And you're going to push it down just a little bit. So the place that you feel your block right now, you're going to want the bolster kind of in that spot. But it's not that far you slide it. Slide it a little bit. You can always slide it more. So carefully you walk back at the balls of the feet. And then I try to just let my tailbone scoop under a little bit to lift my hips. And then I just push the bolster down so it replaces the block. And as I sink the tailbone into the bolster, I think I went down too far. Okay, you want to feel when you get your knees up that you've made a good dent in your bolster. Okay, and just let the knees go side to side, warm up the spine. It's had quite a bit of specific strength work for the last several minutes with a deep arch. So I want you to just let the back warm up on its own. If you feel like you need a ball between the knees, so there's a space or place something between them to warm up the back, the whole back. It's not just what's touching the bolster. As you move the knees side to side, it warms up that circulation through the ribs. Yeah, let's give ourselves about another 30 seconds or so. So you determine the pace, but feel the openness of the arms and the reach across the chest and that lower back into the hips. Okay, your final two crossovers here, I want you to feature some movement of the knees, whether you got a ball or not, where they move towards the arm. And just let the back go along for the ride. Okay, I can get lost on that one for a long time. That's a good homework one. Okay, so now get back into center, remove anything between the knees, and let's take a belt. I know your belt's close. All right, now buckle it up. Okay, so let's connect it. And you're going to bring your knees to scoop into your chest. You may as well just slide the belt, the loop under both feet. Okay, once you're there, this loop is just too small. You want to make it what would be your average widest loop that you would use here. Make sure the buckle, when you do scoop it up with your feet, it's going to be an easy access. You don't want on the other side of the feet, in other words. So, and mine is twisted. It's never something I like, but I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal on this one. Okay, so let the feet reach out. Actually, it's legs, right, that are reaching. And if the blanket, even if you have a one fold blanket or the quarter fold, if this feels too much in your neck, you can always, unfold it, make it a little flatter. But when you move out with the legs, put the hands on the sides of the upper leg bones and notice if there's any kind of tone, right, or contraction. Okay, and it's okay if there is, but the inner legs, right, probably don't have quite the same reaction, right? The side is pretty guarded. I mean, just think of the lateral rotators are crazy, muscles lapped over each other, such shields. But the inner thighs, all that lymph drain that we're working on, really go for this. So if you can let the legs go wider, this is great, right? It's a vulnerable pose, but you're at home, so it's all good, right? But my bolster supporting the pelvis, the legs have that reach. If my knees start to turn inwards, I've gone too far. I'm not capable of it. So that's kind of almost to the edge for me. So I kind of touch the sides of the legs. They feel like they're kind of bracing. Okay, they do that all the time. And feel what it's like if you turn the feet out anyway. Just notice, how does that feel in your legs? Like, can you coordinate the muscles reaching the rotation? And then bring the legs back to what you think is normal or kind of neutral. Okay, if you can, take a block, something extra here. Hold on to it so the block is at its widest setting. That's the only way I can describe it. And when I reach up with the block, even though it's probably pretty light, but you can determine that your muscles kind of have a dual action here when I push a little bit into the block. Okay, not extreme. Now with the legs moving out and the hands pushing in, just see if your muscle memory can stick with that, or your skeletal memory. Now, when you reach the arms back, I want you to couple the action with the legs stay straight up and out. They don't move with the arms. And you're going to slowly, don't let gravity have you too fast here. You're going to try to reach the arms We're getting the ribs and the waist working for something that's coming up. So I want you to keep that reach. Try to hold the block so it doesn't touch the floor. If it does drop and you can't stand this one, you could put the block down to touch whatever's overhead. That's okay. You could even turn the block. That's the other direction. Maybe that's easier. In fact, you could turn it and maybe put your hands on it. Oops. Now I've lost my block all the way. Okay. Disaster. Okay, so hold it above. Don't drop it. Oh, jeez. Okay, so feel the knees bending. Right now, when they bend, they're not probably going to go into each other because you sort of have a little discipline, like I don't want to use my belt because I look like Nicole losing her props. Okay, so reach the block towards the ceiling. Okay, stretch the legs out so they're reaching. And I want you to move the block so it's straight up and down. Bend the elbows by the sides of the ribs. Inhale, arms back overhead, straight behind you. Breathe, ribs extend. The spine extends more than the ribs. And then we'll put the block down to the side so it's easy to attain. Okay, bend the knees, slide the feet together, and start to come into brain float with the right leg up. Okay, give yourself some time, kind of sort out, is the bolster perfectly under my tailbone? Is the belt enough length? Maybe it isn't. So the left leg as it lowers down, I'm a fan of the block below the bolster situation. I kind of like that. I feel it's there. And then as I add the sand first to the left thigh, you can place the sand right at the front of the hip, okay, frontal hip, and then just kind of see what happens with gravity when you let it drop. Right? So the most bulk is at the top. That's pretty important for the knee, right? You don't want it to be bulky and then kind of influence the knee discomfort. So feel that if it's a little weird on the knee, move the leg a little farther out to the left side. See how that works for you. So the hips are a little bit more spread in this position. You want to kind of feel the frontal hip bone on the left side stretching down, and then get busy with the belt. So maybe it's enough length to go behind your head, but as you position the belt, don't let it be too tight. Give yourself some slack. Okay, don't let the belt be twisted under your head either. So as I hold on to the back of my head and get that support, I'm going to kind of just acknowledge the orientation of the legs. Now, my right leg's kind of pivoting out, almost hyperextending here to the knee. So what I'm going to work on is kind of a nano bend, not very much at all with the leg, but really feeling more that the right leg is centered and up. Right? I don't want it to go out to the side. It's not that I don't want to stretch my leg, but I'm trying to focus on that circulation and traction in my neck as well. So my brain centers into the belt, and I try to let my head lean back. If it's too tight, remember you can loosen up the belt. If the whole thing with the belt around your head is just not good for you today, you definitely have an option. It's a great option. You can place your hands inside. This is those that want an option. Hands inside the belt to the side of your skull, and then slide the belt off. This is those only that want the option. You know, I mentioned it over and over, but I just want you to know you don't have to come out of your brain float. And then you would stretch your arms overhead with the belt around the top of the hand and around the webbing of the thumb and the index finger. That can be really nice too. Okay, so come into the design of traction that feels good for you. The left leg might start to turn out more. There's not that much that you can change unless your foot is at a wall, which would be really nice in this one. So you can reorient yourself to get a perfect alignment with the pose. But study the circulation, right? The mapping of the way gravity flows through the right leg, reversing the flow back to the heart. Breathing. You know, as your foot is pushing, notice that pressure. We're going to keep with it on the right leg. So take the belt off the back of your head and hold the belt together with your left hand. Slide the sand onto either the ground on the right side or onto your belly. Keep in mind, sand is good, right? It's very grounding. It's good circulation, right? So as I hold the belt with the left hand, I'm going to start crossing the right leg over, straight over to the left, just straight across. Okay. Of course, you can move your sand anywhere you want at this point. If you want to place it across the hip, you certainly might like extra. But I'm trying to navigate the sensation here in the inner leg, the outer leg. Just feel that supply of awareness. It's like you're refreshing the circulation, right, in the attachment of the leg, the femur, right into the hip. And again, we don't want to do too much. You don't want to find the extremes. And the nice thing about a bolster is that it kind of holds the pelvis centered here. So you're not going to probably roll over completely. I don't want you to roll under your left shoulder here. I want you to keep the chest open. Okay, stay with that emphasis for a few more seconds here. Okay, we're going to take reclining figure 4. So what you'll do is you'll just bend the right knee. So you can protect the knee. Be cautious, like you want to feel like the upper strength of the right leg is part of it. It's not just this leg is being yanked by a belt. And I'm going to slide the left foot in, bottom of the foot centers, hook the right ankle to the left knee, and just be in this reclining figure 4. I'm going to go slow because all these areas are precious to my ability to get around. So just going to take it slow to come out of that side. But this is kind of regrouping the circulation right into the right hip, slowly sinking back into the top of the thigh, the knee, the ankle. Flex the right foot. Breathe. Okay, and feel how the left foot pushes down. And now when you switch the side, I want you to lower the right foot down and press down into the bottom of that right foot. Bring the left knee in and slide the sand on the top of the right thigh. And then the right leg stretches down. Okay, if there's any kind of strange sensations like around knee joint, take caution, go slow. Back up if you start to go in a direction that feels kind of eerie in the knee. See if you can orient to your personal issues in your tissues, right? Feeling what's going to be supportive. Okay. Now, if you like that block underneath and you scoot it under, you might have to kind of just use your hands to move it around or your other foot. I don't think this foot could touch the block. Okay. Get your belt as awkward as it could be under your left foot. Awkward is good, right? We do find that we get into the limits here of our prop use, right? How they can manifest support. So I got my belt in the loop, same thing, different side. Yeah, this side might find that it just drops to the blanket really fast, or it doesn't. It's probably a variation of awareness of the hamstring, and then it's mobility. So focus on kind of centering your mobility here. Maybe you're moving your head. Maybe you like to move your leg, bending it. Yeah, bending a knee is interesting, right? When it's upside down, like what benefit is it when it's upside down bending? Right? It's a different kind of proprioception when you're in an inversion and trying to use your knee, your movement of your knee. But what does that do? It helps your hip. So we may not be doing headstands with lotus pose, but when you do that kind of work, you are kind of moving the circulation, draining it back into the hip, giving some good circulation into the joint, then into the lower abdominals, into your back. Keep it simple, arms open, head back. If you need to take the variation with the arms overhead, go for it. And let's try. And feel what's useful in the position, whether you think it's a good alignment or not. Part of it is just integrating your focus into your body. Just be in the body, feel it, presence of breath. I think it's enough, right? Just to be in these shapes and breathe. You know, is there something that you can release back? Maybe your head, maybe the leg. If you're a little concerned about losing it, like the belt and all, your arms probably respond faster than you know, right? So just see what you can train in your nervous system here. Weight of the head back. Now with your head moving back, right? It should be maybe even a little bit more, moves back to the blanket. If it's already on the blanket and your hands are holding the belt, stay with that. And then micro bend that left knee, and you'll take the belt off of your head, slide it off, let your head relax back on the blanket, and then you'll bring the right hand reaching up to the belt. I like to kind of do this, if possible, to let my eyes close and just feel my way into reaching with the right hand. And then see if you can let that left leg start to cross over to the right side. No rush. You can go slower. You can back up. But when you do make your way to that right side with the left leg, noticing that what might dominate the sensation is the leg, right? And it might be all pulled up at the top in the lateral part of the leg. But I don't want you to forget how the torso can move too. So your waist can also reach to the left. You can feel that little bit of twist. Breathing. And the right leg can be relaxed, right? You probably are losing your sand as we go. Just sand is kind of dropping off. Or maybe you decide to pull the sand up to your belly or to the left outer leg. Bend the left knee. Careful, right? Because you're kind of moving right into that center piece of the leg, right? The left knee. So I'm going to shift back center. I like to kind of hook onto my foot with the belt so I'm securing. And then I try to be careful that I'm pushing a little bit with my foot so that the side of the left knee is stable. It creates a little bit of friction. And then I carefully slide the right foot in, hook the left ankle to the right knee, slide the belt off, and just be circulating into that left. It's kind of balancing from the hip through the inner thigh. Pretty simple. Okay, so of course we're going to blend this into something, but just noticing the lower abdominals, like this kind of vulnerability, but it's nice to feel the left inner thigh and its possible, its potential reach. Okay, we're just going to keep working with this left inner leg in the next shape. So if you have sand nearby, you're going to put the sand over to the left side of your mat, okay? Well, your stuff, the side of your side yard. Okay, and I want you to keep that movement to the left. So you can just slip the left foot off of the right leg, and you're going to move both knees to the left. And then if you've got a block underneath, you can move it once you get onto your rear. But you're going to roll left and then come down the bolster. It's not far. And just push the bolster kind of center of your mat, I think, is probably a good decision here. I guess it doesn't have to be perfect, but here we are. We're now on our seat. We're off our back. So we're going to go into a kind of the side tundra here, the side band. So I want you to have a ball. You might use it under the knee, and you're going to have a block overhead. Okay, even if you're not a block user for this usually, just have it overhead in extra case. Okay, got a couple blankets stacked now. Place them on top of each other. Have the sandbag easy reach. So I sometimes will put it on my bolster so that hopefully my bolster won't turn. It'll stay aligned. Okay, it'll be grounded. Scoot up so this left thigh that we're just on our back with it like that, right? So, same orientation, but feels different this way. So that leg is in the same kind of hooked position as it was on your knee, but don't put it on your knee. Don't have to put it on your knee. Take a ball, if you're using it, on the inside of the right knee, and then start to reach, feeling, how do I reach my torso? Well, what I do is I just move my left arm between the bolster and the blankets. And then what's kind of funny is to try to get your left armpit chest to side with the bolster. So let it kind of lean into it. So it's this nice kind of contour. Really go for the contouring of your bones here. Okay. Sand is delightful on the side, perhaps, maybe across your hip if you feel like it might fall off anyway. Anywhere is fine as long as it's the weight bearing. Okay, it could fall off. It's easy to get. Okay, feel that you've kind of pinned into that right hip. There's a little bit of pinning. It creates a stretch motion. And the right arm is going to reach over your chest for sure, right up to the ceiling. And then gradually see if you can keep it reaching. I don't think gravity's going to have you have the arm flop over, right? And in fact, maybe that's not a good idea. Go slow so the muscles, the seams can feel the energy, kind of like a type of weight training without any weight that you're just pushing against gravity's flow here. A little resistance, but you could flop over if you want. And then the hand maybe reaches for the prop overhead. Where is that? I know it's overhead. It's too far. Okay, so I have block problems today. So when I have that reach, if it's too much tension, right, you might find, bicep tendon, there might be areas that get kind of, they feel inflamed, right? So what I would recommend is if that's possibly happening, just move the block over to the right side, right? Even if it's lower, Probably higher is easier, but if it's lower, that might be just feel better. You can hide behind your arm and then feeling wherever the arm works for you. Does not have to be in the maximum stretch over the head. Can go anywhere. It's still a nice reach. Make sure it's soothing enough to the joint, the shoulder joint. Breathing. Now feel the weight of your head relax into the floor. Let your head relax. The arm can also be on your side, right where the sand is, or down resting on the ribs, and then hand on the bolster is fine. And take the final moments here, really focusing on just the ribs movement. An expansion between the ribs. Okay, now slide the sand off to the back area, towards the right of your mat. And then when you come out, you might feel some movement across the rib zone with the touch of it onto the bolster, right? And when you do motion, we're going to kind of work with the reach of the spinal column and the ribs together. So when you rotate, they have to live together. You're going to turn to the back of your mat, so the feet are towards the wall, the knees about hips distance, and take a cat-cow sequencing. So hands down, but feel that the palms can press down, but the fingers spread out. And maybe you linger in this one with a little bit of tilt with your hips side to side. So you can work cat-cow, basic, alternating arch and flexing. Try to let all that air out on the exhale on flexing. Inhale, gather, moving the breath in. Exhale, hollowing. Okay, some of us might tend to move our hips a little side to side, just randomly. Maybe it just feels good. But start to feel the volume down into the arms. And then as you move your feet to hook the toes under, arch the spine, really try to feel the foot stretching, right? So I'm trying to get the ball of the foot to stretch through the arch before I lift my knees. So I'm going to come back to table and then lift the knees and let your head lower, of course. Where else is it going to go? But it might touch towards the bolster. So walk your feet to a positioning of a little wider than hips distance and let the heels reach to the ground. Okay, if you're not close to heels down, but you like the circulation option, what you might do is just scoot the bolster back quite a ways, bring your feet towards the wall so your heels are up at the wall. I prefer this by far, okay? Because now it's almost as if my legs are kind of working with the wall a little bit for support. My feet are working close to the wall, and yeah, I don't know. Does it feel like if you're not with the wall, you have more weight on your hands? I don't know. I think it's kind of similar, to be honest, for me. But the truth is, the wall is supportive for all it's worth. Okay. Now, feel when that awareness is with your breath, if there is any, when you're in the upside down strength pose. Okay, now come down. We're going to do it one more time, but lower down for a moment. Take a breather. If you need to lean back, if you need to put your bolster under your elbows for a moment and just let your hands open and close, that's fine. Might be actually useful to give yourself some in-between circulation options. Okay. You know, kind of feel if you are on your elbows, with your elbows on the bolster or the floor, you can kind of feel how the shoulders and the upper back, you know, kind of operate, especially in this upside down world. It's just not a place you live with your back very often. Okay. So lean your hips back. Try it one more time. Hands firm, wide. Try to turn the hands out a little bit this time. So the index fingers aren't pointing up, but your hands turn out. Dial the hands and then lift up the knees and reach back to the wall, right? You can have your heels up, you can have your heels down. Don't strain. This is restorative, right? You might find heels up a little better. It could be tolerable of it. So feel where the arms are reaching. Breathe. Hips lift. Okay, now lift up the heels as high as they'll go. Try to get the hips to lift up one more moment. Sitting bones up. Lower down the knees. Caution. Okay, find the arch of the spine. And then you're going to turn to your right hip. Push the bolster maybe a little away from the wall. Push down into your right hip. And then take that side sage on the second side. So we'll lean in. Some of you use a ball under your left leg that's stretching back. Okay. And when I reach my torso over the bolster, yeah, I can always improve on this. So I can always get a little bit more kind of sculpting through the side. Okay. And then as I put the sand on, and then I reach the left arm over. Yeah, you might land different on this arm with the support. Might just feel like, oh, this is kind of a breeze. Different. Maybe it's not a breeze. Maybe it's a little bit snarled up in the shoulder area. So if it's feeling kind of snarled, then you might bring your left hand to your shoulder and just feel the movement kind of jacked up in the ribs, right? Definitely feels like there's some emphasis in the ribs, even if they just lay on the bolster and you just kind of do a little bit of easy breathing. That's pretty good. Just gotta lay around on your bolster a little bit. So if the arm is reaching, feel what's in between the arm and the hip moving with the breath. So if it's exerting too much with your arm reaching, remember you can always lower your arm down on the side of the bolster or move the block over to the left behind you. That might feel better. Okay, your head is resting. That's probably your most important part here. If the blankets feel too high or not high enough, you can always fold it one more time or slide the blanket back. Breathing. Okay, now I suggest you find where that action is in your right side of your back into the waist. So somewhere between the right side of your spine, in towards the hip, kind of the QL area. You're trying to get that to rest kind of deep on the bolster. That's important here. Okay, now when you do come out, we're working significantly here in the mid range of the body. So now we're going to focus on all the good things for the organs here, all the circulation in the organs and the vertebrae. So when you come out of this shape, just take it easy. Let the sand, it can fall right, it can fall left. But when you let it go, I want you to feel how the motion of the ribs is towards the ceiling. Maybe your head is turned so that the back of your head is on the blanket. Maybe you don't like that and you want to stay to the side. That's fine. At some point, you'll have to curl a little bit to the right side to properly come back up. But when you do curl, find that life, especially yoga practice, is about, it's the twists and turns, and then we come back to spinal kind of vitality. So just go kind of slowly to the right hip. Try to put weight into the hip when you come up. And then when you rise up, you're going to take a seat on your bolster. And let's pull our blankets into the bolster so they're right behind it. And I want you to have maybe 2 blocks, kind of easy reach. Not sure if they're going to be that important, but we'll find out. You don't have them too close to your right side, though. Okay, so let's take a seat. Let the right leg stretch out. So it's like about 2 o'clock, right leg. Maybe it's 1, you can decide. And the left knee is bending, of course. Well, you could do these with both legs straight if your knee hurts, but use something under the knee if the knee doesn't easily, really truly easily. So I was playing with this awareness of my sitting bones and how the bolster kind of influences that bit of kind of lift off, pretty much. And you want to find your seat is kind of far back on the bolster. You almost Humpty Dumpty it. It's pretty close, but you might get a hold of the rear and just try to move a little bit out so you have a nice, pretty good base. Okay, so placing something under the left knee, of course, needed. And let's just use our block. So we're going to take a block with the right hand, place it besides the right leg. I'm going to flex the right foot as if I had a belt. I was, under the foot, I was pulling. I want you just to slide the block besides the right leg. Just slide it towards the right ankle. Feel this left side of the waist stretch. And then I want you to slide it back up. Okay. Take a sandbag. It probably will add to the circulation here. You can have it a hip hugger. Some people like to turn the sandbag so it's kind of it feels like it's covering the leg. I've seen all variations, but I kind of like what's predictably going to stay, so I keep it up high. So now you're tilting. You're going to lean down to that block again, slide it down to that lower right leg, close to the ankle if it can go, and then let the left arm reach around to your back. So the left hand is touching towards your sacrum. And I would keep the right hand on the block. Now, let's say you find, I can touch the floor. Well, that's not the idea here. The idea is that you can still keep some lift in your torso. So if I was to touch the ground, I'm going to compress, right? I'm going to sag, I'm going to collapse. So the block gives me a little bit more life force kind of into that side. And with my breathing, it's useful as well. So feeling how the torso feels that bit of turn. Yeah, some of us have our head turning down to the right arm. Perfect. Some of our head tilting ear towards right arm. That feels the best to me for this one for my neck, but it's up to you. Give it another breath here where you feel if the foot starts to flop, flex it. Okay, now lifting up the chest. Okay, come up. Right, like you're zipping up from the navel up towards the collarbone. You're going to turn to the left side, right hand to left knee. hold on to that knee or just above it. And then as you rotate, right, spine circulation, organ circulation. So feeling that kind of refreshing in the back corridor, but it's also in the ribs, right? It's all important here that the movement between my ribs supports the spinal column, that vertebral plumping. If you lose the ball, it might go away because you hold your knee. But feeling that breath in, chest up. Good. And then as you let go of the knee, try to keep the chest up and then turn back towards the center. Try to keep the ribs lifting as if you're trying to pull the ribs up, right? So they're connected to the spine, but you keep that lift and then bring the right knee to bending. And then actually take a moment here, just that cross-legged position, because we're going to move back to pigeon. So I want you just to feel Sukhasana, cross-legged pattern. Okay, now slide the sand off of that left thigh. And we're going to move the right leg back. So you've got blankets back here under the knee. And as you lean your hands down into the floor or the block, so if you need something under your hands, like the blocks to bring you a little bit more arch. I like what's just there, it's the floor. And then as you reach forward, you can place the elbows on the ground. You can use the stretch of the fingers. Okay, but feel what kind of gets, what tightens here. So you might notice, well, my hip feels a stretch, so it kind of feels tight because there's quite a bit of compression moving in there, a lot of circulation, right? A lot of blood going there. So use that as a support. You can lower your elbows down. After you keep them up for a while, you probably have to go down. And then feeling the breath move into the back. Really span the back body, your ribs. Simple stuff. Okay, the back leg can stay extending. Just let it reach down with the top of the foot. I like to bend the back knee. It just depends on the day with my knee. So sometimes I can go almost halfway and it's just fine. Then there's a certain point when it's not so certain. So kind of play with that. You also are playing with the movement of the ribs forwards at the same time. The left foot may not be able to flex at this point. It might be kind of stuck. Great weight bearing here into the left leg. Pressure. Breathe. Okay. Those of us that are going to work a little bit different, a little more challenged, let the right leg lower down for all of us and walk your hands towards the right side. Okay, try to push the floor away so my elbows are off the ground just for a moment, feeling into that left hip. Okay, come back and center. Okay, walk the hands on back towards the left leg in the bolster and then sink your weight in the left seat. Okay, and coming up. Now, when I come up, I want to swing the right leg. Well, it doesn't really swing, but it guides forward. The left leg stretches out. Don't trip over your feet. Okay, so right foot, on the last side, maybe when you were twisting, your ball goes away, but I think the ball is helpful. I could get my knee down, but I'm not interested in doing overstretching here in the ligament. I just want to get some nice balance, especially in my lower back, in my pelvis. So if putting the knee down tends to kind of get you out of, it tilts your hip, then you want to have the ball. Okay, so reach with the left hand to that left leg. Now we're going to slide it once, right? But without the sand on the leg. So just slide down with the left hand to that left ankle. Turn the waist to the right. A little bit of a twist. Okay, and then come back towards the left leg with your torso, slide the block back in if your floor lets you slide. And then add your sand to the top of the right thigh, or however you like to sort out your sand. Okay. Yeah, caution if your knee is like, I don't like this very much, scoot your right foot a little farther forward. See if that's better for your knee. Maybe you put the ball a little lower. I haven't tried that one, but that sure makes sense for me. Okay, left hand on block. Block is, it could be low. Some of us might find we need to bring the block low. If you're, everyone's taller than me, so you might actually have your hand on the ground, right? But don't put the hand down and sacrifice the torso. No torso sacrifice here. So left hand on block, lean down to that left side, but turn the waist to the right. Feel the right hand reaching to your back. Okay, so there's two ranges of motion here. One is that left side, also the left leg, flexing the foot, and that spiraling around to the right lower quadrant of the back, into the waist, into the right hip. This is important for when we pigeon on this hip. Just kind of keep it in mind. If it doesn't make a lot of sense, it's okay. But there's a reason that we're adding these together. This is our yoga mathematics. Okay, it all comes together. So when I have that right hand to the back, some of you like to lift your arm up. I'm sure that's fine. Yep, I like to kind of be mesmerized by the sensation in the waist here. So looking down to the left arm, tilting your left ear towards the shoulder is good too. You decide how you're going to lean to the left. You could put your block closer to your leg or move the block lower. You know, all the weight leads into the left sitting bone here, huh? So when you do come up, try to use that lower abdominal strength. When you lift up, you're going to bring the left hand to the right knee and then take that twist to the right. Keep it so simple that your direction in living right now is just, I'm lifting up in my center span of my bones, right? So think about what's in the center of the bones. You're lifting up is spine, natural arch, abdominally, going against gravity, trying to get that inner lift. Heart gets a lift up, chest opening, breathing. It only helps. It helps just at the right time, huh? Okay, so feel the significance of your in-breath here. And your out-breath. Come back, center, forward. Left ankle crosses in front of right shin. Take a moment, pause, take the sand off the right thigh. Keep it over by the side of your mat. You might go into that spine arch first. You might go into a little bit of flexion forward. It's up to you. How do you want to get into pigeon with the right knee forward? So if you decide I'm going to arch and then kind of bow into it, I like the idea of move the ball aside, pull the right foot closer to the bolster, and then lean into that right thigh and reach it back. Okay, now this time on this side, you might want to walk your hands over to the left first. Because last time we kind of brought that up towards the end. Gotta get it all in now. So you might go, oh, okay, I'm gonna kind of just do a little bit of research into that environment of the hip. And most likely having your eyes relaxed could be better for that, maybe closing them and just feeling for your hip. And you can always lean a little farther down with your elbows on the ground. You could stay forward with your hands. But kind of notice that when you're moving with the hands either left or to the front, your torso kind of slowly goes with that motion. It's just a bigger, denser area than like an arm, extremity. So it kind of has to get back on course. Okay, and of course, elbows down. I like this variation of just feel my forearms on the ground. And I realize there's two. But just feeling where the reaction is of your right seat, right? The sitting bone is lifting, right? You're not trying to push your sitting bone on the bolster. So that's kind of the difference with pigeon with a bolster. When you're a pigeon without the bolster, it's I think the reality in the hip is not as supported. So just use that kind of bump up of the bolster under your pelvis to support the stretch. Breathing. The back leg can bend. Who knows? Maybe this side you just can't wait to bend your back knee and feel the stretch. It's kind of a reduced quad stretch in some ways. It's definitely placing pressure there. I do like it. If my knee is fine with it, it's good. Okay, of course, we want to try to be even on each side as much as we can. So when you lower back your left leg, let's come out of this, but this time we're just going to walk the hands back and we're going to lean into the right hip and bring the left leg forward and then sit back on the blankets. Make sure you're on blankets so you don't fall off of them too much. Slide the bolster forward and then push it with your feet all the way towards the wall. Then you got to get off your blankets. Okay. So touch the wall with the bolster, not your feet. And then find that bend of the knees. And I want you to just take the hands below the kneecaps. So they're right at the top, right at the tibia here, the tibia, the peak, tibia peak. And then feel that you're almost kind of pulling out to the side with the hands, right? So my hands are below the knee and I'm pulling a little bit out, lifting the chest. Okay, keep that awareness and we'll come onto our back. Get rid of one blanket, flatten one blanket so it's really low, right? So it's very low height. Scoot forward and then let's take our leg muscles so that we are pressing into actually the wall. Let's just go for it. Feet at the wall. Feel the natural arch in the spine. And as you lift up, I want you to be close enough to the wall that you feel like, okay, I can get my feet to help me. Blanket is just under your head, not under your shoulders. And then let the hands be on the floor. And then scoop the tailbone under. You have to be a little cautious here when you lift up your hips that the weight goes to your upper back, like a shoulder stand prep. And then lower down the spine. Breathe. All right, now taking this a few more times. So inhaling, lifting, and exhale, lowering. What's kind of funny about this movement is if you did cat-cow with your hands and knees, you would do the breath, the opposite of this one. But this, and it's the same movement of the spine, but this feels more natural to breathe in when you lift. But if you want to do the opposite, go for it. Because on the contrary, that is how we do cat-cow. Okay, now as you let your spine level out, you really feel how you sort out the circulation in the areas that don't make the imprint here on the ground. Okay, so the knees being up like this, I think is kind of healthy, right? As far as the knee crease. I realize it's probably a lot easier on most people's knees. So as you take your blocks, I want you to place them at the sides of the hip. So my blocks are at the second setting. Okay, I've got to be close enough to the wall. I don't want to slide away here. So when I lift up my hips and I slide the blocks in together, they're up at the lumbar spine, so they're not at my ribs, but they are kind of when you started class. You have the support in that spot. So I want you just to feel when you're here, shoulders are trying to roll under. Give it a moment. And the temptation is to get your legs up to the ceiling, I'm sure, and you can do that if you feel like you want to get your legs up, go for it. I like to stretch them up at the wall, the back of my knees, get that reach. and let the shoulders just try to work their way under. Okay, they're going to slide out, especially if you've got a top on, right? They're going to just slide with the clothing, but you're trying to roll the shoulders down and in. This is the key part, is the chest part. The hips are kind of secondary, but they're important too. You couldn't get this openness in the chest if you didn't have your hips propped up. Okay. Now, as you shift along here, feel if your knees are bending, the feet are pushing into the wall. That's perfect. If the legs are reaching, that's okay. And now, if the abdominals have a little bit of lift and lower with the inhale. Okay, now as you let the knees go into their full bending and down on the bolster, your feet are right at towards the wall, I bet you. They're on the other side, almost the other side. Don't let the bolster slide away. Scoot the feet to the center-ish of the bolster or the contour towards you. And I want you to lift up the hips. Get as much hip lift off as you can. The spine is in a massive arch here. Okay, now you're going to scoot the blocks out to the side, and if you've got a ball, and it's probably not near you, but get your ball and place it under the left buttock and massaging into the glutes. We're going to go into hip crossovers with the bolster under our feet, if you can. If you can't, I'll give that modification, but start with the glute massage. If you don't have a ball, you can let your feet be wide on your bolster and the knees windshield wiper side to side. If you don't have a ball. If you have a ball, use the ball to massage into the glutes. Okay, really feel that the hips kind of swing, right? You're definitely wagging your tail, but there's that suggested pressure on the ball and movement. Gliding across the tissues. Okay, now to the other buttock with the ball, roll it over and push into the ball and moving. Again, windshield wipers option, as I mentioned before. Feel how the hips get this stretch motion, but it's not quite like a stretch. It's circulation into the glutes. If you need your blanket higher, at this time you can always fold it one more for what's coming up. Let your hands either relax or they can be on the floor, anywhere. Okay, we'll stay with right buttock focus here. So when I lower my left buttock down, my right is kind of lifted up with the ball. So I want you to let the right leg cross over the left leg, and then the knees are going to swerve left. Your ball's going to be positioned higher up towards the gluteal fold, so not on the buttock, but at the separation of the glutes right in there. And then you can add a block over here if you need. I would use it. I kind of like the block, even if it's low. Add your sand to the outer right thigh. If you find this is too much, you can also put your bolster on the side of your mat, just slide it over and cross the right leg onto the bolster. Okay, if this is too much combination for the knees. Some people, this is great. They like it, they miss it. So it's nice to have the version of choice. But feel that the sand really produces that awareness into that right hip. You can let your head roll to the right. If the ball is bugging you, just move it aside. It might not be as tolerable as you think sometimes. It's a nuisance. Give it feeling the final spinal here. So that movement from the upper back, it kind of moves all the way through the curves, the spinal curves, the S curves of our bodies. Let your brain center over to the right. Now, when you do prep to switch sides, you want to have as much equal awareness, right, for the hip on each side. So when you start to move the sand to your torso, move the waist so it turns back center, uncross right leg, and then switch the back of the pelvis centered, left leg over right, and then move the right foot to the left and let the knee shift to the right side. Again, the ball might be useful. This one, it seems like it's kind of, some days it really is a nuisance and sometimes it isn't. Okay, so, and you know, you might find on one side, right now, this feels like really important to have it, but it might fade away in a few moments. But using the block might be important for some of us under the knee. Even if it feels like it's a bare support, it's barely doing something. You might need that. Haha, need it for your knee. You can turn the block up, right? It doesn't have to be flat. It could be the second setting. Even if it feels like it's really bracing your knee. It's a knee brace. Left arm open. Feel the ribs in that reach. Breathing. Give it a few more breaths. Feel where the natural arch is at the spine. It should be at the very base where you feel this beginning of the arch, right? The extension of the spine. The broadness of the ribs and the chest likely helps that the intensity of the spine's movement. So if you can keep open with the chest, it might not feel like quite a spiked sensation. It just feels kind of normal or a healthy spine. Feel where the weight is on the right hip. You know, when we do move to legs up, you do want to feel like the bolster is cushioning the hips, right? So it's buoyant, right? It's something that creates a little buoyancy in the pelvis, but then this arch is naturally created. So give yourself time to figure out how to get to that next stage. Some of us, we can bounce right onto it. So when you slide your block aside, if you're using that, you're going to move, kind of nudge the sandbag down. And then this is already this cross balance in the hip, but instead of pulling your knees to your chest quite yet, I want you to not shock the sacrum, but keep it so you're crossing over, uncross, roll to the side, and then pull your blanket in close to the wall. Your spine is still at attention here, right? So I'm going to sit up on the bolster and then swing the legs up. So some of these timing is relatively important to have some good pacing with your movement so that this, again, the sacrum isn't shocked. I guess that's kind of a little bit of a, sounds a little dramatic, huh? But that seemed to have been burned into my brain from training. So when your sand goes on your feet and you lift up, let the heels rest into the wall. Some people like their sand to the balls of the feet closer to the toes. Just feels like an interesting sensation, but you know, I find closer to the wall is better for my bones. It doesn't have to be extremely the sand at the wall, but closer to my heels. And then I try to give my knees a reminder not to turn in. And I push the thigh flesh a little bit outwards. Give it that reminder. Maybe my feet have a little bit of that reminder too. No turning in the feet. That's important here. And let the back of the pelvis center on the bolster. If you're a little bit on one side or the other and it feels okay, that's okay. And your bolster can hold you. But if you do find that you're too far over, you might have to reset. Let the arms go to goalposts. If you have an eye pillow, just place it across the eyelids. closing our eyes and sense of moving the abdominals with the breath. Feel the spreading of the inhale and the emptying of the lungs on the exhale. Really feel that spreading of breath. Feel the eyes resting back in the brain. And if this feels pretty soothing for you and the feet aren't tingling, you might stay in this past when I indicate I'm getting out. You might just decide this is really quite medicinal, right, for your heart, for your nervous system, immune system. You might stick with it. You don't have to get out of it. It's a good one to give time to. So it's how much time you're in this one that matters. To give the extremities that time to move the blood from them. It's just basically they're upside down. Moves it back towards the vital organs, the heart. Right, the abdominal organs get this nice, fresh circulation balance, right, on the exhale. In that belly pool. And if you need to stay in the pose, remember, just stay. You don't have to get out. So now when you do shift, for some of us, there might be a few, you move your feet away from the wall. Feel the crease of the knees and noticing how important it is to also feel the crease of the hips. With a bolster, it's hard to distinguish that, I find. If I didn't have the bolster, it might be easier to distinguish this crease. But feel when you bend the knees, only so much. You don't have to overly crease at the knees. You can drop the sand without the knees completely hinging, okay? So feel when the back of the legs have that openness spreading to the back of the knees. This is that upward facing forward bend, right? It's a great one to do for massaging the organs, but the knees are in that contour. They're not fully creased. And then I just let the body roll to one side. You might roll back and forth. Heck, you might decide to stay upside down again. Okay, but roll to a side for me and come around and take a seat. And let's take a moment, whether you're still upside down or you're sitting upright, to recognize just that space behind the heart and bring the hands in front of the heart center. Feel the palms just touching and just simply kind of speaking in breath. So feeling that breath speaking inside. And with the inhalation, let's come together, breathing in wellness. And with our exhalations, bowing into that space behind our hearts. In gratitude, namaste.